right, here we are with our final segment. Now, Umberto, if I understand you correctly, I think it's very interesting. A historical parallel was the Anglo-Americans wanted to overthrow de Gaulle for reasons of his resistance to London and Washington, but they did it with a social explosion. They got a whole bunch of leftists, unionists, ultra-leftists, anarchists, and so forth going in Paris in May of 1968 and overthrew de Gaulle. You're saying that Soros wants to attack Europe by unleashing his myrmidons in the left, ultra-left trade union area and try to overthrow those governments. You got 1 minute to sum up, though.
Yes, the formulation of Soros imply exactly what you were saying, but now the situation is in 1968. They were able, this Anglo-American operation of social explosion, the May of 1968, destroyed de Gaulle, while de Gaulle was changing, it was creating an alternative to this domination. In Germany, in 1989, 1990, there was the same thing vis-à-vis Russia. This was the challenge of creating a new economy in Russia. Now, what is at stake is much more important. It's the future of the financial system, which economic system will triumph. And that's why now there is the threat by Soros that there will be a destruction of Europe and upheaval and nationalist extremism and so on. The parallel in present time of the May 1968 that destroyed de Gaulle.
Except at this time you seem to be saying that Soros has also got some of these right-wing operations under his control. In other words, he's got some skinheads up his sleeve and some
that's what it seems from what he's saying. And remember, left extremism or right-wing extremism, so-called, doesn't make any difference to this kind of player. The important thing is to have a victim and to kill it.
Okay. Well, we thank you for your help, Umberto, and I hope we can see you soon, right? Let's get you back for a post-mortem on this G20 in Canada. Thank you very much.
Okay.
See you next week maybe, or soon in any case. Now, let me just roll on to our last topic, which was another anniversary today, right? It's the 25th of June, 2010, and this is now the 60th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War. And interestingly enough, this has been on in the discussion this week because of McChrystal and Petraeus. In those days, it was Truman, a puppet of Wall Street, fires MacArthur. Truman destroyed himself politically with that. That's when his approval rating went down into the 20s. It's the lowest, as far as I can see, the lowest point of any president since 1945, maybe even earlier. But in the era of polling, Truman is the all-time negative champion after he fired MacArthur, who was widely popular. And I would like to make a case for MacArthur to some degree. But he was then gotten out by, he had to drop out. He just had to give up. Truman had no hope. And then along comes another general and takes over, and that's Eisenhower. Now, so far, it's MacArthur is now, I don't want to compare MacArthur to the scoundrel McChrystal, but McChrystal is now out. Obama has hurt himself by firing McChrystal, and above all, he's put the other general, the more moderate, the more acceptable General Petraeus into a position of great power. Remember that Harry Truman was a Wall Street puppet. Harry Truman had indictments hanging over his head, just like Obama with the Blagojevich trial. Harry Truman was part of the Pendergast machine from Kansas City, Missouri, very dirty, Ku Klux Klan background. Could have been indicted at any time, and he knew it. And we have the testimony of Clark Clifford, who ran him. Dean Acheson helped to run him. The main controller of Truman was, of course, Averell Harriman, the pro-fascist from Brown Brothers Harriman, from which we have Prescott Bush. He was his managing partner who gave the money to Thyssen and therefore to Hitler. So that's the sort of the matrix of Harry Truman. And the group that controlled him during the Korean War was something MacArthur called the firing squad, and that was W. Averell Harriman. It was Dean Acheson, Secretary of State, British geopolitician, helped to provoke the Korean War. He gave a speech saying, essentially, we won't defend Korea. And then when Kim Il-sung attacked Korea, he acted surprised and got the war going. General Bradley, unfortunately, went along with this and precipitated himself to a very low level. Dean Rusk, later on with Vietnam, but earlier with this, the ouster of MacArthur. So with Truman, we have somebody who is in the tradition, the Wall Street wing of the Democratic Party. Grover Cleveland, Woodrow Wilson, Al Smith, Harry Truman, Carter, Obama. Those are your Wall Street Democrats. Those are very, very negative forces in world history. And against that, you have intermittently the anti-Wall Street Democrats, Franklin D. Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and of course, Obama wants to destroy Social Security in the lame duck session this year. He has gone far towards destroying the Kennedy space program, and he has gouged $500 billion out of the Medicare program launched under LBJ. Now, let's look at MacArthur. And MacArthur has a very bad press, but this is not deserved. In other words, you think that MacArthur is just a warmonger and a reactionary. That is quite fantastic. That is not accurate at all. Look at the nation-building work of MacArthur in Japan, and you will see one of the most radical progressive reform programs ever carried out in any country. You can make a very good case that one of the big advantages enjoyed by Japan in the post-war era is the MacArthur SCAP, right, Supreme Commander of Allied Powers, essentially being the more or less independent satrap in Japan and bringing in a program of radical reform, which meant very significant trade union rights, collective bargaining. The Japanese trade union movement strengthened. The rights and position of women mightily strengthened, brought out of centuries of oppression. The whole complex of nobility, the House of Lords, titles of nobility, all abolished. Measures towards a land reform, absolutely critical in the development of any country, right? Look at the Homestead Act here in the United States. A whole series of progressive reforms done by people who were essentially New Dealers, people like Wolfgang Ladajinski and others who served on the staff and who were later demonized by reactionaries. And the other thing, of course, is that it was MacArthur who insisted, along with the Japanese, on incorporating the anti-war provision in the Japanese constitution, which has been a terrible stumbling block for neocons and others in the interim. So the idea that MacArthur is simply a reactionary in the way that some other general, Curtis LeMay or somebody like this, might be, this is completely a mistake. What you're dealing with MacArthur is the traditions of the Union Army of the West. Sherman, that's where his grandfather had served. MacArthur's father had accomplishments as a scholar, interested in philology, and had some good ideas in the history of languages. And then MacArthur himself, going way back, really the best general on any side in World War II. If you look at the relation of territory conquered, basically the overall strategic impact of what he was doing, and the lowest casualty rate in terms of what was accomplished of any leading general, right? And this was the key to the ending of the war in the Pacific. And of course, he was not part of the massive slaughter by the Navy and the Marine Corps with the frontal assaults on the various Japanese islands. This was not MacArthur at all. His was not frontal assault. It was rather leapfrogging, right? Hit them where they ain't. Don't attack the islands where the Japanese are. Go to the islands where the Japanese are not, and you can end the war and end resistance without without sacrificing huge numbers of your own forces and of civilians and military on the other side. And when you get to the limited war concept in China, you will, with the Chinese entry into the Korean War, you will see that MacArthur has a case, at least in saying that the Truman limited war policy was a disaster and would be, and he was trying to force that as a debate when he was fired by this clique of Wall Street puppets. So that's something to think about on this 60th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War, January 25th, 1950. And, of course, Inchon, the last big U.S. military victory of any note. And we'll see you next week on World Crisis Radio. Tarpley.net in the meantime. Tarpley.net.